Hi, folks. Thanks for joining us today for this Safety and Health Magazine webcast sponsored by Intellex. We are going to give our audience members just a minute to settle in, and we'll start the presentation shortly. Thank you. Thank you again for everyone for joining us today. We'll give our audience just another few seconds to settle in here before we start the presentation. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Safety and Health Magazine webcast, Going from Good to Great, Transforming Safety Performance with Technology, sponsored by Intellex. My name is Barry Botino, and I'm an associate editor at Safety and Health. I'll be moderating today's event. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to share with you all. As a disclaimer, the views of today's speakers and organizations are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the National Safety Council or Safety and Health Magazine. Any mention of a commercial enterprise, product, or publication does not mean the Council or the magazine endorses those items. After today's presentation, we'll conduct a Q&A with our speakers. If you have a question, just click on that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, type in your question, and tap the send button. We welcome your questions at any time during today's event. After this presentation, you'll also be asked to complete a brief evaluation survey, but I'll tell you more about that a little later. This webcast will be archived, so you can access it after today's live event. To view this webcast and all of our past webcasts, visit us online at safetyandhealthmagazine.com/events, or you'll also receive a link in our post-event email. With that, let's introduce our presenters. With us today are Scott Gaddis and Justin McElhatton. Scott is the Vice President and Global Practice Leader, Safety and Health at Intellex. He is responsible for the engagement of EHS professionals around the globe to provide a platform for sharing information and collectively driving solutions that mitigate workplace loss. Justin serves as the Vice President and Group President, Environmental Health and Safety at Fortive. His responsibilities include building Fortive's presence as an EHS leader and other critical sustainability solutions. Previously, Justin served as the President and CEO of Industrial Scientific. Again, we thank you all for tuning into this presentation today. And Justin, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Barry, thanks so much, and thanks to everybody who's joined us for this discussion today. It's a topic we're very excited about. Scott and I had the opportunity to talk last week in San Diego and had some really good conversations through the discussion and afterwards. So we hope this is valuable and look forward to your questions. One of the things we love to talk about at Intellex and Industrial Scientific is the vision that we have. And we talk about the dedication we have of our careers to eliminating death on the job. I always want to point out that this is a two-part statement. This is about the movement that we are plugged into, the dedication of our careers to this. And we work with about 1,200 like-minded individuals across our businesses here as we seek to make that world a reality. And there's nothing I love more than something like last week where we're able to be face-to-face with so many of you who are dedicating your careers to creating better environmental health and safety outcomes and eliminating these preventable tragedies that happen every single day around the world in numbers that we need to be ashamed of and driven by to lead change. So it's something we take very seriously and are honored to work alongside many of you as we chase this vision. I always like to start with the story of Crystal Eastman. I am based here in Pittsburgh. And it's where the Pittsburgh survey was done in 1910 Crystal Eastman published a book. I actually have a first edition printing of this called Work Accidents and the Law. And in it, she traced about 550 workplace fatalities that occurred in Allegheny County, where Pittsburgh is, in a 1-year period. It's astonishing how many people were killed and how many awful non-fatal accidents occurred in that time. And you see the death calendar on the right and the number of people killed each month and each day. We tend to have fewer than a dozen now, but that's still unacceptable. And if we go back to kind of the prescription for the early 1900s, it was pretty clear what we needed to do. She outlines this very well in her book and has a number of recommendations. And some of these were legislative, looking at how we built things and the standards that we built things to, and how we legislated hours of work and who could work and child labor and things like that. But some of them were also technological. And one of the stories I love from the book is the emergence of automatic railcard coupling technology that drove brakeman fatalities to virtually none. That was one of the highest occurrences, was brakemen getting crushed between cars, and a combination of technology with that automatic coupling and some legislation to ensure that was the standard, to standardize that across railroads, rail lines in the US, really had a significant impact on people getting home from work safe and healthy. If we go back the last 112 years, we have certainly had reductions in our in workplace fatalities. We go back to 1970 and OSHA and all of these things. As a society, over decades and a century, we are trending in the right direction. However, when we look at things in the near term, we are not going in the right direction. And you can look at this from a US-centric view, where we have increasing fatal occupational injuries over time, or ones that are now indexed to GDP growth, and where we've stopped creating inflection points, which is completely unacceptable in my mind. And if we look at this on a global level, the fact that almost 3 million people die each year because of their job, whether it's from an accident, almost 500,000 people killed each year because of accidents, or 2.5 million killed because of exposures or occupational disease. These are things that we want to be part of changing. Scott's a practitioner. I am not a practitioner, but have been in this industry almost 30 years, and have really, we see things, I think, where we can add value as suppliers to the industry. And this is such an interesting time right now. We look at this transformation, and I'm sure many of you are feeling this same thing, that there is a change going on in the EHS world in ways that I've not seen in my career until the last couple of years. And it's an exhilarating time, and one that we have the obligation to maximize the impact that we have. And I see things as really two big changes. One is that I used to always use the phrase critical but non-strategic, that we had to do our jobs well, or people got hurt or killed. But it wasn't really strategic. And now, with a number of tailwinds, I think, when you see some of the higher consciousness of workplace standards, from employment shortages, from ESG, from COVID, that people are realizing that EHS is something, I think all of us on this, if you're on this call, you've probably believed all along. You're dedicating your career to this function, in this body of work that is truly strategic, that can help companies differentiate themselves in meaningful ways, and drive overall better business performance. So we're seeing that broadly. And the second, just given the exposure we have to the technology, I think we for too long have tolerated things that are disconnected and complex. And we are now seeing those who we serve in our organizations, our stakeholders, our internal customers, our external customers, demanding connected and easy. And I feel that our role is to help you maximize both of these kind of simplistic, not simplistic, but simple views of tomorrow to deliver better outcomes across the board in EHS. We're chasing this from a couple of different dimensions. One is from Fortive. Fortive is the business that I work for that acquired Industrial Scientific, Intellects, Eastsci, and others. We're part of a universe that is a number of operating businesses that are working through consistent workflows. I'm responsible for the EHS businesses in Fortive, and we have the opportunity to partner with great companies like Fluke, Tektronix, and others that are at the point of impact in how operations are done. And so, kind of in a for-profit world, there is certainly much innovation that's happening and will be delivered over time. But the other thing, and being part of the NSC, we're very proud to be a founding member of the Campbell Institute, an organization that's helping to set standards for what excellence looks like in EHS. And also the Work to Zero Advisory Council is something that we are deeply involved in with the NSC. So we're proud to work across a number of fronts towards achieving this vision and to help be a part of that conversation of what great looks like. And how do we help our customers and those we work with every day get there? So we're grateful for the opportunity to talk to you about this. I'm going to turn this over at this point now to Scott Gaddis, and he's going to take you through the specifics around that. Scott, over to you.
Thank you, Justin. And I would say I was thrilled to get a chance to present with Justin. I may be a practitioner. Yeah, I have been for 30 years. So I've been mostly on the front lines where many of you are today, but Justin was in a position of providing tools not only to me, but to many of you. And now he's providing a toolbox, right, of technology and using those tools to really further what we're able to do and to leverage what we've always thought that we could do. So that is my part of the presentation. I'm going to take you through what we see as some of the market trends, or what I really consider the EHS trends that affect the way that we do our jobs as safety practitioners. I always literally go back to the management system and see how technology influences the management system as I look at it. And then I'll share at the end of the presentation 4 or 5 different technologies that I'm excited about as a practitioner that I've included in the presentation that to me are fairly easy lifts for you to think about. So that's what I hope to do today. And I could talk about this for hours, but we just have a short time period to do it. So I'll start with some market trends and how I think that we're going to be influenced or at least leveraged by technology in this space. ESG, many of you have already heard about that. You've probably spent time exploring, what that really means to you as a safety and health practitioner. But we see that ESG is escalating EHS from critical to strategic, and with an emphasis on corporate disclosures, information management. Think about this in the framework of all those non-financial measurements or metrics that are asked of you. It'll start with scope 1 of just trying to gather carbon emissions, but that will continue to pivot to scope 2, scope 3 documents, where you'll find yourself trying to chase raw materials and critical goods and end of use on some of the products that you manufacture possibly. But that's just on the E side of things. But on the S side of things, in that social channel, you're going to be pressed to provide safety information that maybe you've not considered in the past. And we think as a technology company, that's only going to continue to strain you for the desire to get information from your particular part of the functional support team. So we think that this is going to continue to be a big area of concern, not only for environmental, but for safety professionals as well. Think about it this way, and I was reading this through some research, is that there's going to be an element where we are living within this idea of always being benchmarked, right? So if you think about that, we're going to be compared against the competitors that we're in the same channel with, as well as those outside of the channel. So think about it that way, that you'll always be considered to be a benchmark for those that are looking to invest in you, those that are looking to buy from you, and all of those things associated with what you may do. So that's a market trend we don't think is going away. We think it's going to get increasingly bigger. I also think proactive risk management is coming to the forefront. If you think about us a decade ago, or even 2 decades ago, we were very invested in qualitative measurements and how to understand risk. Now we've layered in an approach of trying to score risk, trying to figure out what is persistent within the work system, and going about it through the use of leveraging technology to really understanding how much risk is residing in the work system, and then of course building controls. We think that all of the forerunners, are those that are really pressing forward with this, are using technology to gain better understanding. Digitalization of EHS process is continuing to grow, especially for us as a technology company. We're seeing customers really wanting to get away from fragmented systems. You probably looked at my bio and said, wow, you probably have been around a while. I have. I've been doing this for over 30 years. And I started when I did, just have paper and pencil and a few Microsoft products to use. So I had data line everywhere. We think in this decade ahead, and I'll talk about that just in just a few moments, but we think that those fragmented systems will have to go away because you're going to be consuming so much more data. Regulatory complexity, I probably don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but it continues to grow, especially with the globalization of many organizations. Lots of complexity within the regulations that you're trying to highlight, and there's a lot of opportunity to use technology to ease some of that burden. Companies are increasingly looking how to use all that data. So using technology, we can parse it differently. We can run systems up under that, to algorithms to understand that much differently and parse it in a way that allows you to make a better decision. I often veer away from predictive analytics, but I like prescriptive analytics, So there's a place for both, but I still like having a little bit of control in decision making. But predictive analytics will continue to grow in our space. We certainly have data scientists that focus on just that, but giving you the information that you need in a concise manner that allows you to make better decisions. We continue to see that area grow for us. And then, of course, that fun area, Industry 4.0, IoT, machine learning, artificial intelligence, sensors and wearables, they present a lot of novel opportunity for challenges that we've had. Some of those challenges have been very difficult to overcome. Things like lone worker, biometrics, fugitive air monitoring, robots, exoskeletons, all of those things may be new to you, but they may seem out of reach, but we're seeing that more normalized. Next slide, please. So with all of that said, there's an ever-changing landscape, I think, in EHS. And I did not enter the space in the 1970s, but I did in the late 1980s. And we saw this, we witnessed, this evolution of human behavior. And we had a lot of resultant program, around that. So basically being able to observe someone, look for those antecedents that we cared about, and then give feedback. And many of you were there along that way. In the 90s, we ushered in this idea of knowledge and capability training through new methods. It was very common for us to buy computerized systems, setting employees in front of a computer and having them take some of those lessons that we did not want to do in classroom. And then over the last couple of decades, starting in 2000, there was this inflection point. So we started seeing, and that was the internet. So we started seeing things rapidly advance in EHS. I would say a couple of things here. The things like HOP, started coming on the same human and organizational performance. And that saw us combining a lot of things together. So training, behavior, compliance, all of those things mattered, but we knew that they were weighted differently within the work system. So we were using those different tools that we had to mitigate the risk. Now in the 2020s, right, this decade that we're in now, we've ushered in, Industry 4.0, which describes this fourth industrial revolution. That includes cyber physical systems, the Internet of Things, right? All of those things that we talked about. But look right below that, digital native learners, right? So those are the workers. Think about this, millennials down. They have these different perceptions of what they see in the workplace. They're the largest demographic now that we have working for us, or they're the largest people group that we have. And then they expect so many things much differently than how I grew up, and I'm a digital native. So everything I know about technology, I've learned it mostly as an adult. So you can see that there are differences in the way they learn, the way that they accept information, or even how they get information. I would say this is that technology also helps define millennials down. So most rely on social media. They're taking information in smaller bites, and they always have a smart device or a mobile device in their hand. And most of you know that. So they expect to see technology as an answer to some of the problems that they have. Next slide, please. I think, and I've used this quite often. Many years ago, I was speaking to a group of safety and health professionals, and I got a question, from the audience. They asked me what I thought the most important job was as a safety and health professional, and I said that a vital and possibly the most important job for EHS leaders is to leverage the behaviors of employees to make correct decisions by removing variables from the work that drive them to make the wrong decision. So it's barrier control, right? It's staying in front of your work system and watching for these errors that are residing within that work system. Some of those are very dormant, so they just kind of float around in your management system. Then they become armed. So somebody starts making these decisions, they're ready to strike, and then they become activated when a substandard decision is made. So our role really as safety and health professionals is to reach back into the management systems and isolate where those errors could happen, or what I call error control or barrier control. So think about this in the framework of using technology. Are there technology advances that allows you to look deeper into your management system and consider new control efforts to remove some of those things, to mitigate some of those things so they could not pass a threshold of loss? Next slide, please. So, with all that said, you're working with a management system, right? You may be using ISO 45001 or 14001 or 9001, or the newest one, ANSI Z10, or you may just have a hybrid of a lot of things, which, much of my life I did. Next movement, please, Justin. You also have these sources of data. You have incidents, you have observations, you have behaviors and injuries, a long list of things, right, that you have data on, but it may be within your system. It may just be lying there fragmented where it's not much use. Next movement, please, Justin. And then what I consider, these are the levers. So I often ask practitioners, before you can fix your problems, you got to know what your problems are, right? So that's an audit of your management system. And then another consideration is that to understand that all management systems are really interwoven, right? So we have a quality management system or a health management system or our operations management systems. All of those factors are interwoven and they touch into your management system, your safety management system. So what it all means, and Deming said this best, is that we're all independent, right, of one another. So when things happen to one part of the system, it possibly and most likely will affect your part of the management system. So with that thinking in mind, how do you move these management systems forward? I think, one of the things, and I've used this particular model probably for 25 years, is that, to move a management system, you really do have to work on capability development and capacity. One of those is how much I know, what's my skill level, and then can I give it back, or am I allowed to give it back to the organization? The second piece of that is control of the physical environment. That's everything from regulatory compliance. Do I have JSAs? Am I doing inspections and auditing? Do I do hazard ID campaigns? Do I know what's going on in the work system? So a lot of things, right? But I would say this, that many safety and health professionals get stuck, right, in that one element of the management system. They're just running a very compliant based program. That third, and maybe one of the more fun things, if not the infuriating things at times, is this behavior and engagement piece. Is, that's BBS, and some of you certainly use that. But bigger than that, it's driving expectation, it's mentoring, it's practicing, it's coaching, it's all of those things that are softer, from some of us, but they are imperative if you're trying to move a management system forward. Management accountability, probably where I've spent most of my time. It's objective setting. It's making sure we're doing gimbal leadership walks, on the manufacturing floor or the service floor. It's system monitoring. It's communications. It's setting vision. It's setting mission, right? And it's holding a leadership team accountable for what they are to the organization. So it's value setting, right? It's driving value within the system. So many times, I hear this, well, what does this have to do with technology? I look at it and say, is there a place where technology can leverage change to the system that we've not been able to leverage before? And I think there is. Next slide, please. We did a couple of pieces of research. So supporting maybe some of those thoughts, we commissioned new research, and we did this in Europe, actually, where we had maybe some more refined organizations, especially from a risk standpoint. But we did surveying of over 700 EHS and ESG professionals. We do have a full published report, but some of our salient findings from that, I was not surprised by really anything that I had heard. And if you were to ask me, have these been resilient problems that we've seen for a long, long time? I would say yes. Some of them certainly are with the times that we're in, like adopting a broader perspective. There is an increasing concern, and maybe the more forthright thing I could share is that safety and health and environmental work, that we do now understand that it could have a negative impact on not only the organization, but maybe even the community. So we are starting to understand that functional support from an EHS perspective means more to the business than ever. So we do have a seat at the table, so to speak, and we need to use that influence in driving some of the work systems that we care about. Protecting the planet and defending the bottom line. We're seeing a greater focus to minimize harm, to the business environment and harm to the environment. So we don't think that's going to go away. And you certainly see that daily, in the evening news. And then the last one there is getting employees on board. We see respondents increasing their focus by meeting these challenges that they've had that hinder employee involvement. There's almost been this separation between a management team or a mid-level team and then those that serve on the front line. I think notable on this particular slide is that 40% of those surveyed believe that technology and training and capability development are their path for improving safety and health in their organization. So certainly take that note. Next slide, please. We also asked this question. What are the biggest safety and health challenges that you face today? And you can advance that slide, Justin. And this is really what we discovered. 41% said employee participation was key to success. 33% said that a trained workforce, and following close behind that was implementing a culture of safety. So as I look at all that data, right, looking at all this data that we've collected, it really is apparent that we still have a lot of room to better the culture with safety partnership, right? It begs this question to me, is there a work system lever that's missing that could close this gap? And I believe that as I reflect on that, I think that there is. Advance those next slides, Justin. And you can go to the next one. Yeah, I think it's this, right? We set up this challenge. The challenge is to create a very sustainable performance culture. And I've underlined this because I think it's really important, where heightened decisions happen without thinking too deeply about them. It's just not been normal, but it should be. Good data is necessary to gain insight about the work system and then provide you a picture in effort to reduce these risks in your management system. So think about you and your personal life and how you go about decision making, and then ask yourself, am I affording the workers, the employees that we have in our organization, those same tools to make a good decision? Or what I started with, just a few slides back, can I remove all of this variability from the work system that allows them to make the best decision easily? Right. So that's a big question, and I hope that I can answer some of that as we go forward. Next slide, please, Justin. So I really do think this. I think that the technology has certainly become a big lever to success. I've changed the way that I look at this model, and some of these models, when I look at them, I say, well, that's a big circle around these four things that I care about. So regardless of how I put it on the slide, I do believe that technology is a huge lever in how we're going to be successful, going forward. And why is that? Well, I think it's simply because of all of those things that I've talked about. But what I would say is this, is that the work environment is getting faster and it's getting more complicated. And I talk to colleagues quite often, and they're very concerned about things like machine learning, where now we have assets that are making, quote, decisions, based on how it was running an hour ago, a month ago, maybe a last quarter, but it's starting to make those decisions, quote, on its own, right, without a lot of interaction between that and the operator. So what are those new risks that poses for a safety and health professional in trying to build training programs, trying to build protection programs, right, to in an area that we're not quite sure how to control yet? So there's a lot of these areas that I know that you must be concerned about. Next slide, please. So we think it's really this. It's proactive safety at the front line that's going to be this new inflection point, especially for us as a technology company. And not too many weeks ago, we collectively put together the very best talent in our company for strategy setting and mapping out, where we thought the technology needed to go in regard to our journey. Not only, how we look at servicing clients, but how we lead programming differently that makes a difference for you. And in essence, we don't want to simply develop solutions that you believe that are desired from, quote, a safety and health team. What we want to be able to do is to deliver solutions to you to get it from the safety and health team or the environmental team all the way out to the front line. And that's a game changer. I know, I've led Kimberly-Clark, I've led Bristol-Myers Squibb, and most of my success has been when I could get program away from my teams all the way out to the front line, right, where decisions are being made on how products are made or how services are delivered. So it's a really, really important step for you to consider when you're thinking about this technology journey. So, I'm going to just talk about a few examples that I think are exciting to me as a practitioner. They don't include every, technology example that I could share today, but at least they're easy lifts for you to consider, and maybe most of you will say, well, I can certainly implement that, right? So I'm hoping that we can do that, in the rest period of time. Next slide, please. So I think, one of the more powerful truths about data is that it's laying everywhere, right? Is that we have it around us. We have it in Word, we have it in Excel, maybe Access, all types of Microsoft tools. But for this discussion, what we did is with our customers, we have over 1,400 customers, probably 5 million touch points in those systems quite often. But we began to look at the data in our systems and started to compare the data of our best performing clients to the metrics that they were following. So kind of think about that, right? So they're following these metrics. They have heavy participation in those metrics that they follow. And then, when I looked at trailing indicators like OIR, TIR, DART rates, our better performing clients also had metrics that supported that they were doing very, very well. We call this the engagement score or the safety engagement score. And if you'll advance that slide, Justin, these are the areas that we found that our best performing clients were following with understanding what metrics that were important to them. And, one of the first things that I would ask you to note is that there's no out of the box metric there that probably, right, is new to you. Is, auditing, the information distribution, which is document control, which is, all of those things that we care about, communication, meetings management. Do I have employees that are going to toolbox talks? Are they attending safety meetings that are required? Incident investigations, are they assigned? Are they performed? Are they completed? Training, do they go to safety training? Are they, performing well in safety training? Recognition, am I, giving the communication in a positive way? Do I hear from a plant manager or a facility manager, once a week, once a month, once a quarter? Actions management, CAPA control, are we completing the things that we say that we'll do that takes risk away from the system? And then finally, hazards and observations. Do I see the behaviors that are desired in the system? Am I noting hazardous things that I find within the workplace? So those are just really generally things that you're probably doing today. But let me tell you what we've done with it. We ran an algorithm under all of these metrics. And the next slide, please, Justin, is that we started looking at them differently. So we collected all of these areas from the management system. But I could say this, I'm not sure that those are the magic 8. I think you could have 10 or 12. It's really the metrics that you cared about. But on this slide, we show it, after running an algorithm under this information, and show a single, what we call an ordinal score. And it really makes it easy for you to measure and compare the strength of your engagement. So if you can, in layman terms, take those 8 that are represented there, crunching them all up with an algorithm, right, and popping out a process score. So this is about process robustness. Over time, it really allows you to gauge the effectiveness of your program investments. It shows you, what shift crew or what plan or what part of the business that has outliers, both on a good side of things and then, of course, on a low performing side of things. So what I did with this, and I think the power of this is that you can pair good performers with not so great performers, right? So you can pull the journey up for a low performer. You can also compare, facilities, or you compare shift crews, or all of those things, right? It really does open up a lot of things for you to naturally pull low performers up, right? And it also does another couple of things. We have a client that no longer has to push program to his plants, but he's actually pulled, right? So we notice that we're low in a certain area of our process. Can you come help? So we think there's a tremendous amount of power in determining what good looks like for your organization, and then getting better, over time. So if you kind of look at this with this whole idea of lean methodology, you're not so concerned, right, about the 6.7. What you're concerned about is my process growing, or is it falling behind? So you're really responding to red, yellow, or green. And that's a very positive way to look at performance, of where you're always trying to judge process strength. So we think that that's a piece of technology that is fairly easy to scale in organizations, that really works for your benefit. And then, for me, I was always challenged with having few metrics that rolled up to a corporate level. This is one that I could really share, that could capture a lot of metrics that I care for, but it presents it in a way that's easily understood. Next slide, please. Communicating with purpose. And this is really where I start getting really excited, because again, I've shared that I've been doing this for a long time, but thinking about how we reach the front line. When I started, I was on the floor, and I've always been someone that's been active in the field. I like the relationship building. I like visually seeing what's a challenge, but the ability to communicate deep in the organization, I think it's a game changer. And thinking about how we reach, the front line, we use technology a little bit differently. We use what we call the bulletin application, to communicate and to engage employees at that moment of information need. So they're never getting, information that they don't value or they just simply don't need. So it's much like you as a safety and health professional walking through a facility and interacting right with your work population. So we focus on really data consumption rather than something to do like a task. You can do shared lessons. So shared lessons are learned across the organization. If you've had an incident, this is certainly a way to bullet point, what you want them to know about that incident. You could take a picture of something that you want them to know about. So, really the sky's the limit when you think about how you want to communicate and those important things that you can communicate. We have, personally, a lot of clients that do acknowledgments, thanking people for doing the right things, acknowledging ideas, rewarding people. And then, of course, push notifications is one of our stronger suits. You can highlight immediately, what they need to see. So you have an active shooter situation, or maybe it's like Florida has sustained, a hurricane warning, right? You can give information about that. And you can all do it, through a mobile device or even a kiosk. But what we have found through our surveys is that the closer we get it to somebody or to a worker in the way that they want it, and I talked about, the millennials are now the biggest people group that we have at work. They do want to see it on a mobile device. Next slide, please. And I'm just going to build upon this, right? And communicating with purpose. We also see this as a way to heighten learning. So when you increase capability through effective knowledge transfer, one of the more exciting things is how to do that. We think a couple of things, and I'll use, and I use this as I've kind of distributed this talk, is that we often start with macro level training. That's MAC. I'm from Kentucky, so sometimes they sound the same, but macro is classroom training. It's me standing in front of you, sharing and increasing your knowledge on a subject like lockout, tagout, or energy isolation. So the better understanding that you need, the more complicated the subject is, we usually pull that back. We'll do it in classroom with an instructor. However, there's this journey, right, that happens. So now I've had that training, I'm going to go to the operating floor. And this is our opportunity to use technology to leverage macro MIC, and those are small chunks of training, right? So let's say that they've gone through my energy isolation class, and what I want them to know is, did you remember that the blue lock stands for personal isolation, that the red lock is for group isolation, right? So you can continue their learning process, and we call these transition points. So the moments that really matter, that can make or can break an employee's capability and what they are to do. So all of them are on a learning curve, and what you have to do as a safety and health professional is to decide, right, how I'm going to make that person great and their capability and skill, or do I see them kind of shifting down to no longer learning or forgetting what was said within some of those classes. I think the most important barrier to overcome is that learning should not all be classroom based. And we know that through a lot of surveying and studies that we've been a part of. So with this thinking in mind, this tapestry of learning is certainly something that technology could help you, in your practice and your organization. Next slide, please. So you're doing this, right? Whether you think you are or not. These are a couple of applications that I have on my mobile device right now, learning any language in 10 words a day, right? And some of you may have that one. Next slide, next advancement, please, Justin. And the word a day, I love this. I learn a new word a day. And when you're from Kentucky, that's a good thing, right? To increase vocabulary. So those are a couple of things, but that is really micro learning. And many of you definitely probably have some of these applications on your mobile device. Next slide. So, talking about bulletins for micro learning, think about this. It's very concise, it's modular, it's easy to design. You can experiment. I was doing these for a client and actually our own organization. During the pandemic, I literally had 6 or 7 bulletins designed for microlearning within, 45 minutes to an hour. I had them loaded up and ready to go. We also had sent all of our folks home to their homes to work, right? So, what kind of chair to buy? Do you know what a power strip does, right? So all of those kind of safety things, I was able to deliver through a bulletin from a smart device. And then what I was looking for down at the bottom of that slide, you see, I understand this information, a thumbs up, or I don't, and I need more information. If you do, get those type of responses, then of course you can lead them to a policy, to a picture, to an SOP. So really, this really does open up your ability to not only know who's getting information, but do I understand it? I can deliver it and you understand it. And maybe you take that off of your training plan if it is well understood. Next slide, please. Gaining compliance, I think that AI and MI, filtering, being able to filter through information. We do this through a company that we bought not long ago called ESI. And that fourth technology really looks at the advantages of using artificial intelligence and machine learning to do things differently, right? To kind of pile through all this data. And this technology, you can literally scan a document, let's say a permit or a regulation or a standard. Through that system, we analyze that document, and then we start pulling out, right, these requirements that are important to you. So think about it this way: is if I could literally pull through 1926 or 1910 of the OSHA regulation and come up with a checklist of standards that you really needed to follow in your organization, it almost becomes your audit, right? How do I lead program very, very effectively? And then how do I integrate that within the management system? So one, you're auditing, right? And then you're taking all of that information and you're able to build out your management system very efficiently, very quickly. And you can always stay on top of this, right? Because what you would pay maybe a consultant to do once every 2 or 3 years, you can literally do on a very frequent basis. So using, this power of artificial intelligence and machine learning is a more efficient way, and many times it's certainly a cheaper way to do it. So those type of advantages are out there for you as well. Next slide, please. And then, this is, I've probably been leading up to this, is that extend EHS partnership with mobile. Finally, and I said most exciting. It is really exciting for me, because I just gauge everything with how I started. It allows you to really engage the workforce and capture critical and timely data, allowing you to really assess your management system in real time, or at least near real time, and reducing those potential incidents and increasing productivity. So mobile platforms, something that they can carry in their hands, provides enhanced access to applications that are important to you. So if you have, inspections going on, or auditing going on, or behavioral observation, or taking pictures of things with hazard ID and sending those things up back to the cloud, right? There's just a lot of things that really extends your reach into the organization. You can use that information from the front line to uncover predictive and prescriptive insights, and it really shapes your program. What I like to think about this is that for my entire career as a practitioner, what I was wanting to do is to increase the ability to move from participation to what I call partnership. Employees own part of the program, and that was really important for me as a professional. I was certainly trying to do that by extending my personal reach into the organization, but what I was wanting to do is to create enough value at the manufacturing floor for me that they wanted to partner with me, that they wanted to own part of this safety and health process. And I've been very effective in doing that. Technology allows me to do that deeper, better, faster, certainly more efficient than I ever had before. And it allows me to get more information. So one side of this is an output, right? I'm sending information out to the front line, right, the way that I want them to receive it. However, the biggest benefit for me is to have them partner with me and give me information back, so we can conclusively or together agree on the important things of the management system and do it together, right? So that's partnership. So my opinion, this is where all of my success has happened, and where I think it can really embrace these ideas and help you, is to bring EHS and safety and health, of course, to the front line and gain partnership. Next slide, please. So leveraging change and closing, and I know I went through this quick. I noticed I was running out of time. Changes in technology, I do believe it's going to require strategy and culture change. Becoming more familiar with emerging technologies, for EHS, I speak about it quite often. So I would tell you, link in with me, because I do speak about technology often, and we do host some of these webinars. New products are going to be entering into the market at a very rapid pace, and safety professionals will really need to find time and exposure through conferences and workshops to learn about them. Being involved with your IT process and your organization is a real important facet of being successful. We were at the National Safety Congress last week, and there was just a tremendous amount of new growth in the technology field. And you could see it, with the vendors that were set up there. Begin now, I believe, and thinking about budgeting, and think 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, what's 10 years look like for us. But technology products, then, you'll need to price them, right? You'll need to understand the financial impacts to your organization, and then working with IT, really, how do we budget these very, very effectively? And finally, the process roadmap really is an important step for you. It enables you to expand or redevelop this overall safety strategy for your organization. If you don't have such a strategy, now is the time to begin developing one. I'm certainly a resource for you if you would like to talk further about that. But I would just challenge you to get started if you're not started. And then if you're coming up with these roadblocks, to reach out and to gain a consultant's advantage of understanding what is the proper path for you to go. All right, Barry. Well, that's about as much a guy can say from Kentucky in 50 minutes. I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Scott. And thank you, Justin, for sharing your insights with us today. Just a quick reminder for our attendees, if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to click on that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and type in your question and hit the send button. Before we start the Q&A, I want to let everyone know about the evaluation survey that we're asking you to complete. The survey will open in a different screen after this webinar. Your input is important because it does help us to improve our future webcasts. Now let's get to some of those questions. And Scott, I want to start with you. I smiled when you mentioned that you had data lying everywhere early in your career, and I wanted to ask about that. As when EHS professionals think about using data differently, what should the expectation of that data be?
I think the first expectation, one of the things, and I was an early adopter of digital collection of data, right? So when these corporate platforms or enterprise level platforms came about, I was an adopter of that. And the first thing that I noticed is I was able to collect data, right? So at least I could go in and mine the data that I was really looking for. I think today, what the safety and health professional should be looking for is a system that can parse that data, right? That can bring it down to these top 2 or 3 things that I really need to focus on. And that comes through sometimes running algorithms, but at least being able to predict from a very high level of what you should be seeing within the system, and then being able to respond to it with prescriptive programming. So I think that's where we are, today. I think the biggest challenge for us in safety and health is that we deal with people, right? So that's a very fluid part of what we do. And it is very hard to do finite, prediction on some of the things, but we can certainly get closer, with prescriptive understanding of how we need to take program to remove some of that variability from the work system. So I think it's collecting data, centralized location, and then using tools to parse it down so you can make good decisions is, to me, what the most important thing is today, for the safety and health professional.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Justin, I want to send the next question your way. And obviously with technology, everyone is at a different part of that technology journey. And for someone who may be just starting out or someone who may be stuck at a certain point of that journey, what advice would you have as far as getting technology more integrated in what you do as a safety professional?
I think I'll make 2 points to that question. The first is to be very clear on the problem that you're trying to solve. I think too often, many times, this is a discussion about technology, but at the end of the day, if we focus too much on the technology, we may lose sight of the problem. And I think that being crystal clear on what is the next most impactful thing I can do to solve this problem will oftentimes increasingly lead you to a technology solution. And, Scott, did a great job talking about prescriptive analytics. And we see many of our customers ready for that. But at the same time, we also see many customers who are not even using leading indicators.
Yeah.
And one of the examples that I always use is in part of our business, we do gas detection. And, in my career, I've seen many, if you are having combustible gas alarms, that is a great leading indicator of a pending, pending potential disaster or of hydrogen sulfide or whatever it is. So is there low-hanging fruit that we can make progress on? And oftentimes that low-hanging fruit in our field tends to be readily available leading indicators that we can start to apply. And just to your question, Barry, like, how do we just get purchase on that and start moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
Those are sometimes some of the things that will then, in a stage of maturity, take us to more prescriptive or predictive analytics.
Great, thank you for that. We had a question come in from our audience from Robert, who wants to know, how do you incorporate costs and benefits with technology, and what systems are out there?
Scott, do you want to take that, or I'm happy to?
You can start it. I'll finish it.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we've seen over, and I'm talking over years, is that I think customers or users are more sophisticated in how they view the cost of things. And, many times we are going in and implementing homegrown systems that are that are difficult to manage, or the people that know how it works are going. And I think the understanding what downtime is, understanding what the cost of organizational change. I would encourage people that are looking to do that to try to take a holistic view of what change management costs and the whole implementation. And because these EHS systems, as everybody on this call knows, these touch so many different dimensions of the organization, and particularly when we want to get that to the front line. Looking holistically at that maybe would be the rough advice I would give. Scott, what are you saying?
Yeah, so Robert, I think that Justin nailed it. We currently, for our organization, we have an ROI calculator, so that we look at things like, cost of injury, workers' compensation, incurred direct costs, right? Efficiencies, downtime, all of those things that you probably care about in your organization. And we kind of crunch that up, right? So we basically give you a report of where we think that, for example, with us, our technology is a good investment for you. And sometimes it's not, so we have to pare down a system to help. But we do have those calculators as part of our organization to help you have that discussion, with the C-suite or senior leadership, so they understand it. And we go through a lot of parameters that with information that's easily accessible to you. So we try to make it simple. But I'm certainly, glad to help you with that on offline, since we're coming to a close.
Great. Well, Scott, I wanted to send the next question your way, and it's about a term. ESG is something that some of our readers at Safety and Health know about, and some may not. So I wanted to ask you kind of a two-part question, and Justin, feel free to chime in as well. How would you define ESG, and how will it affect the work of EHS professionals?
Well, right now, I would say that a brunt of it is carbon emissions, right? It's understanding the environmental side of ESG. So, scope one is learning about ourselves. And if you think about that, it's really what we're reporting now. So we're capturing a lot of carbon emissions data, reporting that through various regulatory agencies, but it's going to grow. So scope two, scope three is going to get more concise and trying to understand your entire supply chain. So we think it's going to be heavily involved on the E side for quite a while, but on this social side, where it's going to start impacting safety, some of that, I don't think it's been well defined yet, but there are going to be metrics that we're going to be required to understand, but it's going to be more from a behavioral side, right? From a hard metric side on the lagging indicators. But think about what Justin said just a few moments ago of leading indicators. What are those leading indicators that are important to an organization that we're not following now? You'll see some of that in the social channel. But right now, I think everyone is really kind of focused on the carbon side and really trying to understand that, through submitting information. Justin, you want to add to
Yeah,
that?
I this is a topic that we probably
Yeah.
do need to have another webinar on, because there's just so many things to unpack here. But fundamentally, I like what Scott said earlier. There's benchmarking, right? We're benchmarking against each other, and I think if you kind of raise up above a lot of the really good debate right now around ESG, what I think we're seeing is a world trying to harmonize on quantifying and comparing things that are really hard to quantify and compare. And the momentum that will come from that, I am very excited about how the kind of conversations we're having. Our customers ask us about, hey, how do we, how many 100,000 hours of work at risk do we have with people at height in confined space, et cetera, et cetera. We as folks in this industry are going to, and we need to be driving new means to define what excellence looks like, and then to have all the bouncing off each other that happens in these kind of forums and in industries to start to define new best practices, because the heat's been turned up, because we're now being compared in an element of my company's ESG rating or whatever it is centered around our safety performance around leading indicators. So I think there's a lot of very interesting things that are starting to really come in together around what the motions look like to improve.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Looks like we have time for one more question. And Justin, I'm going to start with you on this one. A question we hear a lot from our readers at Safety and Health is, how can EHS professionals balance technology and privacy concerns that workers may have?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'm not going to give you a great answer. I think it's there's a whole world of standard. I mean, there's a whole world of standards around personally identifiable information, and that we as suppliers to the industry have to operate to. So there's kind of the baseline of that, but then you get into areas where we want to intervene in the moment, and we want to be able to drive impact at the point of impact in the plant, at the well, at the site, and I think that we're really interested in seeing how video analytics is playing out, where we're able to do that without compromising privacy. So I think that is still, I think that there's always going to be that tension between the two, but I think we're seeing things that are that I think are going to be that are going to enable that.
Certainly. And Scott, quickly, would you like to add anything to that?
I would just add, we're just very compliant. We really deal with secure information, so we really strive to be compliant with HEPA and ISO 27001 and SOC 2, SOC 3, right? So those are some of the security protocols that we have to jump over, right, to do business. And we're also a part of this ecosystem. We deal with ERM and Microsoft and Workday and HESA, right? So they have very, very high security requirements. and with technology. So we meet all of those, especially for a company like ours. I think it is, a question that you need to ask, and regardless to who you're dealing with technology, is to understanding how secure that platform is. We've crossed that hurdle. We deal with large enterprise clients, so we have to be, but it's our value, right, to make sure that we guard your information.
Great. Well, thank you both. And we appreciate your insightful discussion today. Folks, unfortunately, we've run out of time. We thank you all for attending today's presentation, and we appreciate you taking some time to share your feedback via our survey. A special thank you goes out today to our terrific presenters, Scott Gaddis and Justin McElhatton, and the entire team from our sponsor at Intellex. This ends today's Safety and Health Magazine webcast. Take care, everyone, and have a safe day.